5 devs make a video game, but no communication between them is allowed. This is the Pass the Game challenge, where worlds, stories, and insane projects are built from the ground up in the strangest way imaginable. Frustrating misunderstandings, wild comebacks, and broken games are to be expected and are part of the fun. We've created real-time chess, a zombie-smashing multiplayer card game, an action-packed gardening roguelike, and so much more. You never know what might happen, so without further ado, let's make a new video game, starting with developer number 1.
Heyo everybody, I'm Joe Sullivan, the creator of Floromancer Seeds and Spells, a top-down action game where you grow spells to fight for rare seeds and take your home back from deforestation. Check it out on Steam. I'm very excited to go first because it allows me to try a game idea I've been thinking about for years. A game where your only movement is dash. To balance out not being able to move, the dash had to be extremely powerful. I found the most fun and unique was to launch the player directly to the cursor. Then I added a couple simple enemies to test it out. I spent way too long adding obstacles and pathfinding just to determine it's way more fun to dash around a big open space. Then I made a shooting system where ammo spawns on the map over time, so you have to weave in and out of enemies to get these massive bullets. Honestly, I'm pretty addicted to this game already. It feels like being a superhero in a zombie apocalypse. Alright, thanks Blackthornprod. Check out Floromancer on Steam or contact me at the link below and I'll prototype your dream game.
When I got the game, I was happy to see that it was a nice and completed gameplay loop. It had a fun and simple mechanic, but it definitely needed a little something else, and I felt my left hand was getting a little left out. My first idea was to add to the player's immediate decision making with spawning coins or retroactively power cells that the enemy can also pick up. Now the game is pretty fast paced, so I don't want to ruin the flow at all with pauses or menus or pop-ups. I want it to be always on the fly, and I always want to keep the tension. So to get the power-ups, a little window will appear in the bottom left where you can choose between one of 2 randomly selected options using the Q and E buttons. When a purchase is made, it will refresh after 5 seconds with 2 new options. So I've been playing a lot of Helldivers lately, and I swear, and I promise, I thought about this before I unexpectedly get grilled for it in the comments, but to use power-ups, you have to punch in a 4 key code with the WASD keys, like the stratagem system. Now hear me out, I think it actually works really well with the feel of this game so far in terms of its urgency and being swarmed by the enemy. So I played around with other options like the number keys up the top, but the WASD keys generally just work better when you're not looking at the keyboard and are pretty instinctive and natural. Now most of my time was dedicated to setting up these systems so they were ready to work with and not be broken for the future developers, so they can add their own power-ups easily and very quickly. So anyone with knowledge of abstract classes can easily make one, as it has all the requirements including the key codes and a function to create whatever effect they want. All they have to do is just drop it into the shop when it's finished. I tried to come up with 3 power-ups to best example the range of ideas you can have, like an instant health upgrade, the slow-mo ability, and a magnet object that you can drop to suck enemies in. This one was definitely the most fun. I then left a bunch of other vague power-ups not set up yet for people to interpret and create their own based on just what I called them. And then I set up a similar system for the enemies, so every 5 or so seconds, it scans through their available power-ups and makes a random purchase. I only had time to create this tank, but if the enemy collects 5 power cells, they will buy it and spawn it in, which shoots this big cannonball at the player. I also set up a few more basic enemies with different spawn rates, like one with more health and another one that moves quicker. Alright, if you like what I did here, you can check out my YouTube channel. I have a current devlog series about a roguelike that I'm working on, or maybe you could check out one of my successful jam games on my itch.io page.
We've created a free game development course called the Launchpad. This is our gift to the Blackthornprod community. We want to show you that game dev isn't as hard as you might think. Not only that, but it's even more fun than playing games. Basically, with this course, we will show you that your passion for consuming games can also be used to create them and earn money. So with this free course, we'll teach you how to create your very first video game using Unity and C#. We'll start off by teaching you the basics, the fundamentals of C#, and then we'll create a real-time strategy game called the Blood Altar. You're going to be controlling a band of miniature workers, collecting resources, defending the Blood Altar against vicious black knights. We have made this free course with complete beginners in mind, so if you want to learn how to make video games, now is the time. The link to this free course is in the description. And without further ado, let's get back to our current project with developer number 3.
Hello, I'm Rugbug. I'm currently working on Killer Junkyard, a horror game I started making for a previous Blackthornprod video. You have to survive until dawn by avoiding grotesque mechanical human creatures that want to turn you into fuel. I'm working hard to add new features, including a level editor and many more levels, so make sure to wishlist Killer Junkyard on Steam if that sounds interesting. Playing around with the project, the first thing I'm noticing is that it isn't very impactful when you shoot an enemy. I added some hit stop and screen shake, which makes it a lot more satisfying. I want to do a visual upgrade, but I like this geometric style. So I decided to go for a cleaner, more softly shaded look with chunky outlines. The power cell didn't seem to have a model, so I made one in Blender. I also made a new magnet model to replace its placeholder art. The UI also needed a facelift, so I spent some time redoing it. I also added this death screen so you can tell which enemy killed you. I found a nuke item in the game files, but there was no code implemented for it, so I decided to add it with a custom model. When you use it, it blows up any enemies in a radius around you, but it's pretty expensive, so you have to make sure to save it for when it matters most. I made this warning when special enemies respond, but adding this made me feel like I had to add a boss fight. I wanted to make a boss that fit the geometric style, but was still visually complex enough to distinguish it from regular enemies. I took the arm off of the excavator from Killer Junkyard and replaced the flesh with cubes. Then I made some attack animations and coded a boss fight against what I call the Reacher. You have to shoot it when it's vulnerable on the ground, which requires some precise timing and dodging. It has 2 attack phases, one where it rakes its fingers along the ground, and one where it smashes the ground with its fist. It can get pretty intense towards the end of a run. If you like my changes, consider wishlisting Killer Junkyard on Steam. Thanks.
Hey, my name is Tarook and I'm a game developer. When I received the files and opened the project for the first time, I was pretty surprised to see that the game basically already had a full game loop, functional, polished, and with a nice Helldiver code thing. So the first thing I made was a procedurally animated leg system using Unity's animation rigging package. I figured this would make enemies look more threatening without actually needing skills in 3D modeling and animating. The idea behind that system was that I was gonna make it completely independent of the enemies, so that it would be easier to edit when finished. Once it was done, I just copied and pasted it in the enemy's prefab and BAM! La Creatura. After adding it to each enemies, we now have a bunch of insects running towards us. Also spider tank. I wanted to spend some time polishing the game a bit, so I added this vignette effect with post-processing, and I added royalty-free music and sound effects, some of which I modified a bit. Then I added another post-processing effect which would shift the hue of the game every minute so that we get this sort of dino round feeling to the game. I also wanted to make the ground change color, but the project wasn't in URP, so I couldn't use Shader Graph and I suck at Shader Lab. Now the game was looking pretty good, but it had one big issue. It was very hard. So after tweaking some values in the player and the enemies, my next concern was the power cells. One of the game's mechanics is that power cells can be stolen to spawn special enemies. But most of the time when they do, it's either because the power cell spawns on them or by accident when following the player. So my plan was to add a new enemy which would basically be a goblin that runs around the map and steals batteries from you. Also, I wanted to add a new bullet type and allow the next devs to add new ones if they wanted, because right now you couldn't. So after reading through the code, this was my task list. And so I did just that. Yep, just like that. Totally wasn't the thing that took the longest to do. Yep. So here's the goblin. They just wander around the map until a battery spawns and then they try to steal it from you, as goblins do. And here's the shotgun bullet. It doesn't have an outline because I only know how to make outlines with URP projects, so hopefully the next dev knows how to do it. And that's all of what I added to the project. You can check out my YouTube channel where I plan on posting game dev related videos soon. I plan on making a video where I make your ideas into a game, so feel free to drop some in my community tab. And that's it for me for now. I'll see you later.
Let's see how we got from this to this.
Hi, I'm Iiro. I'm a game design student from Finland, and this is my son Eero.
So Blackthornprod sent me this prototype for a Helldivers 2 mobile game, complete with stratagems.
Still, the game feel is pretty good. I like the procedural animation on these things. Looks cool.
Visual feedback and UI were a bit unclear. Also, the game was horribly out of balance, especially for someone trying it for the very first time. My mission objectives were to separate the UI elements and make them more distinct, tutorialize the game, balance, and theming. And if I had time, I'd add some content. I changed the bullet visuals and names to make it clear that you have two types of bullets which behave differently. I added a damage taken overlay to communicate if you get hit. I separated the UI into distinct parts and added some contrast and more visual feedback, like the shop windows are red until you can afford the item and the shop refresh is a loading bar. The game needed theming and I was wondering how to get the most bang for my buck.
Can you help Daddy with a game design problem?
The game is now called Hack and Dash. Pun is severely intended. I made this adjustable difficulty system and made the game start off more beginner friendly. It actually took me a long time to figure out that someone had added this hue shifting mechanic. I really hated when in past the game challenges people remove stuff that other people have added, but this I feel was just adding to the visual clutter, so I disabled it. I'm sorry for whoever made this, I'll buy you a beer. I made 3 tutorial levels which required you to learn the basic mechanics before you can pass the level and enter the actual game. The level was feeling a bit empty and some structure would perhaps add some depth, so I added an obstacle spawner to make the levels more dynamic. With 1 day left, I wanted to add some content, so I was pondering between 2 computer virus types, either a worm or a Trojan.
All games have giant centipedes.
Okay, fine. So I added this centipede enemy, which when killed spawns these goblin enemies which steal your power cells. Last thing I did was add some contextual text between the tutorial levels. I made the ground black because I feel this fits better with the theme and also makes the enemies and items stand out. I have absolutely nothing on Steam, so you can't wishlist anything even if you wanted to, but here's my YouTube and itch. If you want to do me a favor, ask Noah and Liam to invite me back. This was great fun.
Here we go. I can't even make a reaction video because it's taking all of my thoughts to not get killed.
That thing is f***ing terrifying. Jesus. Look at its legs.
Yeah, this has got to be my favorite pasta project. It comes together like so fun to play and also so clean.
Geometry Wars is one of my favorite games of all time. So this is, I want to say made for me, but I did start this. So maybe there's a reason for that.
Data Scraper. That's a good name. I think it had a strong core game loop, it had good gameplay, it had a lot of content, all the new enemies, the new weapons that got added were really cool. So yeah, I think it came together really well in the end.
Those shooting effects hit really hard. It's awesome. Very juicy. Oh my god, is that a giant centipede? That's awesome. I definitely think it needs more like power-ups, because I only think 1 was added since I created it. There's only 1 boss, so I think you could like segregate it into maybe different levels with all kinds of different bosses, and more like special enemies and all that sort of stuff. Just a little bit more content, I reckon.
I fully agree with that. I think the core gameplay is really good. It's just like with more content, it could actually like be a proper game.
This looks so f***ing cool, what the f***? Oh, there's more time to react, that's so smart. They made a centipede! What the, why didn't I notice that? Oh, I wanted to do one, but I didn't have time. That's such a good idea. This is so sick. I love like the little effects on the floor. That's so cool. You did an insane job with this sort of cyber style thing. I was kind of hoping that someone would play with that idea of like, oh, they're either computer bugs or like actual living bugs or something like that.
Probably if the models didn't have like the outline, I would have thought that, okay, these are just completely placeholders. It looks like Helldivers, so I was toying with the idea of like, could I perhaps model some insect legs? And I was like, no, not with this schedule, I can't. So I said, okay, what can I do to get the most bang for my buck in terms of what there's already here?
The aesthetic is just awesome. The whole thing gets really chaotic, and it kind of just keeps building up into absolute chaos.
Nuke the boss! And instant kill.
I would definitely start with an online global leaderboard. I think the game could be even more addictive if you see yourself like climbing up the ranks.
Okay, he's getting low. I got a lot of bullets. If I die here with all these bullets on me, that's going to be embarrassing. Oh, well, that's embarrassing.
For me, this was also a good learning experience since I'm still fairly a beginner. It was really interesting to read somebody else's code and trying to figure out, what does this do? And okay, now I get it. And then like try to add to that and also sort of work with the limitations of what somebody else has like already implemented.
This is the best pasta project I've been a part of so far.
It's quite addictive, and I look forward to keep playing it so I can keep getting a high score.
Remember that you can check out our complete free course if you want to learn how to make video games. In there we teach you the fundamentals of programming, Unity, and we even make our very first game. It's jam-packed with value, and again, it's completely free as a gift to the community. Okay, make sure to like and subscribe, it's a huge support, and stay tuned with some very exciting game dev videos that are coming up. Alright guys, see you real soon. Cheers.